So very fortunate to be with Father Peter Williams this afternoon, and we're going to talk about a subject that I think will resonate with so many of us, and that is what it means to be a warrior for God. We are prayer warriors in our hearts when we answer a certain call, and Father Peter has been gracious enough to take time with us today to talk about it. Hey, Father Peter, how are you?
Good, RJ. How are you doing?
Doing very well. Great
Great.
to see you. So this summer, we had an opportunity on two separate occasions to talk about prayer warriors. And I was hoping maybe we could revisit that and you could provide us with an update.
Well, what we talked about was being a warrior for God, and
Yes.
then what's evolved from that, which is kind of interesting, a surprise to me. A little while ago, I just had this thought that I should start like a little group of people who would be prayer warriors. And so it's not just a warrior like we were talking about in those other two sessions, but that they would be prayer warriors. So that
Yes.
to sort of focus it down to specifically being a prayer warrior and what that would mean. And so you invited me to talk to the men's prayer group, and so I went over and was still sort of hashing things out. And then during that week, it became clear to me, okay, this was something that I was supposed to bring to the parish at large. And I thought it would be reasonable because when we were talking, we were saying a warrior is like one out of, using the Heraclitus quote, is 1 out of 100
Yes.
kind of thing. So if the prayer warrior is 1 out of 100 people that's called to have a special focus in prayer, and what would that mean? And so I was expecting about 5 or 6 people, given our size of our parish, the people that we're supposed to have in the parish, kind of thing. I thought, and then now we have 12 that have signed up already, and I have 2 or 3 people who are thinking and praying about it.
Beautiful.
At least 2 or 3 who are thinking and praying about it. So we're and I actually have some people outside of the parish who are saying, "What is that? What's that?" Or I feel called to something like that. So
Praise God.
yeah,
So that conversation that you had with the men's prayer group about a month ago, right? And I think there were maybe 8 of us that particular night, and we all saw your draw to encourage us, but there was at that point there's still maybe not as much clarity as you have now to what you're asking of us.
Exactly. So what happens sometimes to me is it sort of spurs something. So your invitation, I came over unclear about, and I think it was probably obvious that I had some of it, but I didn't have a complete picture because
Yes.
the people that were interested from the men's prayer group said, well, can you clarify some things? And so then I remember just sitting down and writing, a prayer warrior is 1 out of 100 men or women. He turns his life over to God daily in an act of surrender and submission to atone for his and the world's many acts of disobedience. The warrior holds in his heart and mind the thought of God. He says this prayer throughout the day in everything he does. He also has a dedicated time or times each day that he focuses on the Lord of hosts alone. Lord of hosts is a title that God, it literally means Lord of armies, kind of thing. So this act of worship is done through a variety of prayers, the Mass, rosary, meditative reading of Scripture, or a spiritual book. A prayer warrior is concerned with his salvation, but more importantly, with the salvation of all God's people. And I think, that speaks it has spoken to a number of people's hearts. And it's sort of as always, it's an odd collection of people. It's not just the standard, think, okay, well, everyone in this group is going to sign up, or everybody in this group, or that kind of thing. No, there are a few from here and there and whatever. And
when you first brought this topic to me, just one-on-one, it immediately resonated with me, because there's a when we involve ourselves in daily prayer, when we devote ourselves to the Lord, but when there's strife like we have right now,
Yeah.
you're asking yourself, Lord, asking the Lord, how is it that you call me? What is it that you ask me to do with this? And the invitation that you provided us with spoke to me in volumes.
Right. And so it's this, that, and in that first line, I try to capture as much of this as I could, and you're one of them. So you understand this, that there's a sense of that what I'm trying to do is surrender to God. So it's an odd thing, because usually you think of a warrior as trying to get somebody else to surrender, kind of thing, that you're on the offensive, and a prayer warrior is sort of on the offensive. But the first target, or that he has to conquer, is himself or herself, in that sense.
Yes.
Like that if the original sin was an act of disobedience, as well as pride and a number of things, but really an act of disobedience, then in order to find our way back, we go there and we surrender to God in an act of obedience. And so it's that line, so we're trying to make up for our disobedience, and then the disobedience of other people in the world, and that's all around us. We've talked a number of times how sort of, if anything in 2020 that's becoming clearer, is that people have to pick a side.
Yes.
Like, are you with God or are you against God? and however that we see that sort of working out, and it's not pick a political party or pick a this or pick a that. It's, are you going to be faithful to
God.
the authentic teaching of the church? Are you going to be faithful to God? Mm-hmm. Is it like that no matter what else, you're going to keep your eyes fixed on God and say, whatever you want me to do, that's what I'm going to do. There are all kinds of other people and voices in the world that are saying, oh, you should do this, or this is an important issue or topic or whatever, and it's easy to get distracted, and some people are being distracted by even good things. Somebody says, well, this is what it means to be a Christian. And they hold up an issue, kind of thing, and say, this issue, it summarizes all of the issues, and you have to be on this side or that side, kind of thing, whatever it might be, whether it's racism, or whether it's the ecology, or whether it's COVID, or, and they present all of these things as if they're the issue, where that is I'm afraid, and I think very strongly that there is one issue at the heart of all of this, and that's being obedient to God.
Your reference to surrender, and that's not, when we think of warriors, that's usually not what we think of a warrior doing, but it's exactly what we're called to do as prayer warriors. But when you said that, another thing that struck me was the peace that we receive as a prayer warrior, right? I mean, you wouldn't particularly think of a warrior of any type being a peaceful soul, but right. I would beg to differ with this.
Exactly.
It's incredibly peaceful, the
right.
joy that in solitude we receive in our hearts by doing this.
Right, and that's the kind of thing that the prayer warrior, I mean, anyone who's serious about the faith or kind of knows the faith or their faith, says when the circumstances that surround you become more difficult to survive, then you need to be clear, right? You need to be even clearer. So the first thing
when you say clear about how this is affecting me, how I'm supposed to move forward.
All of those things and more is sort of that clarity that is going to help you survive in the battlefield, that makes you move forward in the midst of all kinds of million distractions, and you still have a mission to accomplish. You can worry about all of these things being able to, like bombs going off and this and you can worry about all of those kinds of things, or you can just do what you're supposed to do. And I think that's one of the things about the warrior, is that he has clarity. And in order to, there is no way that we can accomplish that on our own. There's no way that we can really have that clarity in the midst of a million different issues, because we're not smart enough, we're not clever enough, we do not have enough energy and time and all of those kinds. In every way, each one of us is not enough.
Right. But God does.
Exactly. And we were never meant to be alone.
Yeah.
We were never meant to try to figure this out for ourselves.
One of the most insightful things that I've experienced with this is exactly where you're going right now, which is at first, and in a minute, you're going to talk about what I'll call the mechanics of what this means, right? But at first, when you hear this, people you and I've spoken to, they get overwhelmed before they take the first step. And that's okay, because that forces you to open your hearts, to give it up to the Lord and let Him be the guide. He is the one that's creating that strength in you to do this.
Right.
And all of a sudden your burden is lightened instead of it getting heavier, which is counterintuitive.
Well, one of the things that we know, but we don't necessarily live, is that we know that Jesus is Savior, right?
Yes.
He saved the world, but He saved each and every one of us. So He's already accomplished all of this. And we need to remind ourselves of that all the time, that He's already accomplished all of this. He's already won the battle. What's left is for us to join His side and literally to surrender to Him. Then we have this great possibility of His life, His grace, His love within us, right? Because He chose that. He chose, the devil thought he had won when he killed Jesus, but wasn't certain. And then, he thought, okay, so I did away with the one. Then Jesus rises from the dead, and it gets really dicey, in terms of the devil's strategy. But he's okay, how's this going to go? Well, come Pentecost Sunday, it's done. It's accomplished. The Spirit enters into, thousands of people, the apostles in particular, but then thousands of people, right? And now he realizes, wait a minute, I not only have to deal with that one, now I have to deal with thousands. And this has been the down through the history, this is the thing that baffles the evil one more than anything, is that you are called to be Christ. I am called to be Christ. We're not worthy, but if we have that Spirit within us and we get out of the way, God can accomplish again and again and again and again and again.
Yeah.
It's been proven. Jesus looked at His disciples. He said, oh, you think what I'm doing is great? He goes, you're going to do better. They can't believe it. And still to this day, we sort of look at that and we say, I don't know. Jesus was kind of no.
Yeah.
He's proven it 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times over. He will do more in and through us.
So walk us through what this looks like.
Okay. So when people come, I just sort of, it's a rudimentary thing. I have to have the physical sort of, so I give them a rosary and I say, this is the weapon. And we talked about that, right? This is a weapon of choice. So if you want to confound the devil and everything else, yourself included, kind of thing, you take up the rosary, meditating on the life of Christ. And in that repetition, you sort of discover amazing things. I give everybody a crucifix, and Beth said to me, you're giving everybody a crucifix. Now, after I sort of came back from my operation and all of this, the particular ministry with this crucifix is that I give it to those people who are dying, seriously ill or dying. And I say, hold this in your hand, and remember two things, that whatever you're going through, He went through. He suffered and He died, right? And then the second thing is just trust in Him. And great stories come about from that. Well, the first thing I want to give to the warrior is here you go. Remember, you're going to die, right? And carry this with you as if you were prepared to die and you were preparing to die.
Yeah.
Whether that's just a figurative thing, sort of like a spiritual death, can they take that with you?
Since you gave me this, how many times I've reached in my pocket to grab keys or whatever, and it's been this subtle reminder to me of why I'm here.
Right. So keep that with you when you're praying, wherever you want. You keep it by your prayer or take it with you throughout your day, however, but this is sort of another reminder. And then we have these beautiful copies. I remember in the days we were producing these ourselves, and not nearly as pretty, but this is a quarter of an hour before the Blessed Sacrament. And
Beautiful.
We're not sure where it comes from or whatever, but it leads you through. And I just want to remind people that in your prayer, include prayer before the Blessed Sacrament. either come to our chapel, come to the church, either church, or if you're at home, just spiritually, mentally, place yourself before the Blessed Sacrament, right? And so have this with you. And then, of course, this is the Father Delindo's surrender to the will of God, the novena surrender to the will of God, because when you go through these 9 days and they're just little paragraphs, it teaches you all about surrender. And the more you go through it, the more it goes through you, kind of thing, and sort of changes you. So I say, surrender is the key here, as we were talking about earlier. So those two little bits, sort of the prayer cards, or the little bits of prayer. And then I give them the Gospels. Now, this is the whole New Testament. If I could find, other than that pocket version, which I can't read, this is the closest that I could get. I would say 4 Gospels. This is the whole New Testament, but focus on the Gospels. You need to understand who Jesus Christ is. You need to have a personal relationship with him. So in order to do that, you need to read about his life, read his words, focus on that. So keep the Gospels, read a little bit every day.
Great.
These are all things we've talked about, right? How many times have we talked
absolutely.
about this? And the final one, I'd have to say my sister gave this to me for my birthday, and it took me about a month to get to it, sort of in whatever, but I was just sort of struck to the heart of me. And it's Luisa Picaretto's 24 Hours of the Passion. And so for each hour.
So powerful.
Yeah, each hour she has these meditations, both at what Jesus is going through and that what she is going through, trying to reach out to Jesus and in compassion, and to suffer with him and to be with him. And because if you want to understand what Christianity is all about, you have to go to the Passion. And this is a beautiful way to do that. Of course, the scriptures are another way, you can do that. But her visions and her little thing give you this more of an insight, the kind of things that we're looking to get a better purchase.
Yeah.
And then when you go back to the scriptures, it informs that. And it's been given the Nihil obstat meaning, that the imprimatur rather, that there's nothing in here that would detract from our understanding of the faith or anything like that. So,
Father Peter, who should feel this call to be a prayer warrior?
yeah, I'm not qualified to say. I think it may be everybody, it may be just a few. I don't know. I mean, I was surprised. That's how I started to tell you. I was shocked and surprised that
How many
have responded.
Yeah.
If it's 1 in 100, well, then now we're covering 1,200 people, kind of thing.
Sure.
And I think most everybody is called to do these things, but some are called to be sort of the warriors. And
Right.
and there was an image that I received, not me personally, but I was listening to a Protestant minister, and I think he described it very well, our times. And he said, Christians are like at this wall, and we're holding up this wall, and behind it is this great flood of water that can just overwhelm us, sort of like Noah's time, right?
Yes.
And I think that's a reasonable
It's a great analogy.
analogy to say that in our times, in Noah's time, evil is running rampant in the world, when people are just so convinced that good is evil and evil is good. Well, we're in the midst of it. And he had this image of Christians holding this wall, and it was their prayer, was holding back. And he said, some are leaving the wall because they get distracted. I got to do this, I can't do this, whatever. But others are standing there. And I imagine the prayer warriors are meant to be the ones who will never, ever leave. If water starts coming over, if the wall starts cracking or whatever, they're just never going to leave, because that's their job. Until they're told something else, they're just going to do that. And they will encourage 100 other people or 10 other people. If we were using that analogy, if you have one warrior, that warrior then speaks to the fighters, those other fighters, those other 9 fighters, and says, you're with me, you're with me, we're going into the breach, and they're looking for someone to follow, right?
Yeah. So there, many feel as if they're looking to answer a question. Lord, how should I serve you during these difficult times? How is it that I can serve you? and they try different things and nothing, they just feel like they're falling short. They're falling short. But then they pick up this mantle and they accept this. And all of a sudden, this clarity is created. And the more that you give yourself over to the Lord, the clearer it becomes.
Yep.
And it's also an invitation that you understand if other people don't accept it, because it is a lot to ask, right?
Right.
If you're busy, you have a lot going on in your life, maybe you have kids, you have grandkids, whatever, it can be seen as a daunting task. We're all different places in our spiritual journey. Maybe there will be a time, it's not today, but maybe it's a year from now or 5 years from now. But those of us who do feel called, how should they respond? Should they respond to you?
They can certainly do that with me. I've described the kit. I've read the description, and you can review this on YouTube as many times as you want. I tell people that I hand the kit to in our parish. I say, I want you to have the basic kit. It's sort of like signing up. You're being recruited or whatever. I'm going to give you the basic kit. Here's your uniform, here's your backpack, here's the weapon or whatever. So I want to give you the basic kit, and then I tell them, you feel free to substitute any of the things that you're more familiar with for these things. But I want you to listen to what I've told you about, the passion being at the heart of the Christian life, that you're not going to understand anything unless you're willing to enter into the passion, and on and on and on. If you have a different rosary and a different crucifix and a different, feel free, kind of thing, to make those substitutions. But remember, this is sort of the basic kit.
Yeah. I try to avoid throwing too many compliments your way, but I will tell you, as a Catholic, as one of your parishioners, I'm so thankful that you introduced me to this.
Well, thanks be to God. I mean, obviously, I don't come up with this stuff on my own. So, God, I think so. If it were left to me, no. But yes, thanks be to God.
Yeah.
That he still, and this is a beautiful thing, right? He still speaks to me. He still speaks to you. He speaks to any number of people. And that is the source of our strength.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If you feel in your heart that the Lord is calling you to more, especially during these difficult times, I think this subject should resonate with you, and it is certainly a wonderful reminder to us all to trust in God.